Oh, hey guys. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. How are you? All right, so Jack and Annie are in the city of Venice, which is in Italy. That's the boot-shaped country in Europe. And they are attempting to solve a problem for Merlin. Their goal for these missions is, of course, to use magic wisely because they're trying to learn how to do their own magic. But they want to learn how to use magic wisely in order to be able to learn their own magic. So they're in Venice, and they're supposed to be kind of following this list of things to do, but they kind of got stuck on the first one, and then Annie was like, whatever, we'll just figure it out. And, Annie being Annie's like, let's go! And Jack's like, no! And anyways. So, that's where we're at right now. They haven't used any of the rhymes. They get 10 magical rhymes to use on all 4 missions. They have to be very careful, because if they use them all on one mission, they'll have none for the other missions. So, here is our vocabulary. Canal is a series of water channels that run almost like streets through cities or through areas where people live. A gondola is a flat-bottomed boat that people use to travel on canals, specifically in Venice. And the gondolier is the person that drives the boat. They stand in the back and they paddle the boat for you. Grouchy means like grumpy and irritable. Eerily means like kind of creepy or spooky. Prong is like the edge of a fork or a tine of a rake or something. And then Venice is the actual city itself that they're traveling through. So, anyways, we are on chapter 4. I just got like super blurry. I guess I got too close to the camera and it freaked out. Sorry, camera. So, Jack and Annie just got into the palace where the ruler of Venice lives because they learned that the king of the sea or the ruler of the sea is supposed to be the one that helps them. And because they couldn't do the first part of the rhyme, Annie's like, well, let's go find the ruler, and they sneak into the palace. Jack found Annie standing behind a column in the lantern-lit courtyard. The courtyard was quiet and completely empty. Everyone must be at the carnival, said Jack. I just hope the ruler's home. Yeah, we'll ask him if he knows about the grand lady, said Annie, and then we'll tell him that he has to help us save her from terrible disaster. Jack looked at his map of the palace. Several rooms were labeled ruler's living chambers. I guess that's where he lives, said Jack. We have to go up some stairs called the giant stairs to get there. The giant stairs, said Annie. Yeah, said Jack, listen to this. These stairs are called the giant stairs because they're guarded by 2 large statues of gods from Roman mythology, Mars, the god of war, and Neptune, the god of the sea. Cool, said Annie. And yes, those are also the names of 2 planets because all of our planets are named after Roman gods. Fun fact. Jack and Annie hurried down the passageway that ran along the courtyard until they came to a wide staircase. On either side of the stairs were giant marble statues of strong-looking men. Mars and Neptune, said Jack. This is it. Come on. They quickly climbed the giant stairs. At the top, Jack looked at the map again. Now we turn to the right and head to the golden staircase, he said. Keeping an eye out for guards, they crept down the hall until they came to a fancy staircase under a gold ceiling. All right, there it is. Let's go. They hurried up the golden staircase. When they got to the top, they froze. Another guard was slouched by the stairs. His eyes were closed, though, and he was snoring softly. Jack motioned to Annie, and they tiptoed past him to the entrance of the ruler's living chambers. Jack glanced at the map. This is it, he said. The door was open, and they peeked inside. Knock, knock, said Annie, but no one answered. They stepped through the doorway to see a fire blazing in the hearth. Overhead, many candles burned brightly. The dancing flames cast shadows on the floor and the carved ceiling. I have a feeling the ruler's not here, said Annie. Maybe we should just go. Jack looked at the map. Wait, the next room is the map room. Let's take a look. Okay, but we should hurry, said Annie. Jack led the way to the map room. Colorful maps hung on the wall. In the middle of the floor were 2 huge globes. Jack sighed. I love this room, he said. Look, more lions, said Annie. She pointed to paintings of winged lions on one of the walls. Why are there lions with wings everywhere? Jack looked up winged lion in the book and read, The winged lion is the symbol of Venice. Represented in paintings and sculptures all over the city, the lions stand for strength on land and sea. As Jack and Annie looked back up at the lion painting, they heard footsteps. The grouchy guard and sleepy guard rushed into the room. Hi, said Annie. So we're looking for... There they are! Thieves, the sleepy guard said. I told you I heard voices. Whoa, whoa, whoa! We are not thieves, said Annie. We were looking for your ruler to ask him for his help. "She's right," said Jack. "We have to tell him that won't admit your crime, huh?" said the grouchy guard. "Well, the worst cells are reserved for criminals like you. Move!" "But we—" Annie said. "Move!" said the grouchy guard. Jack knew there was no use arguing. He took Annie's hand and led her out of the ruler's living chambers. The guards walked behind them, pointing their guns at their back. "To the end of the hall and down the steps," said the grouchy guard. Jack and Annie walked down the hall, then down some steep, narrow steps. They moved through a low stone corridor, the guards close behind them. "Over the Bridge of Sighs," said the grouchy guard, "and be sure to sigh when you cross it, because you won't be coming back for a long time." Jack gripped Annie's hand as they crossed the covered footbridge to another building. Once inside, they started down a lantern-lit hallway filled with puddles. Jack's shoes felt squishy and soggy as he sloshed through the water. "Halt!" shouted the grouchy guard. Jack and Annie stopped in front of a heavy wooden door. The guard opened the door and pushed them into the dark, damp cell. The door slammed shut. Jack heard a heavy metal bolt clang into place. Then he heard the guards splash away down the hall, arguing with each other. The prison was creepily quiet. It was actually hard to breathe in the cell. It was hard to see, too. Only the dim light of the hallway shone faintly through the barred window. Under the window was a wooden bench. "What now?" Annie asked in a small voice. For a moment, Jack couldn't answer. He was stunned. Minutes ago, they'd been at the Bright Carnival. Now they were locked in a dingy prison cell. "I'll, look in the book," he said. He felt shaky as he opened the research book. He moved close to the barred window to read by the dim light. He looked at prison and read. The prison cells at ground level in the palace were called the pozzi, meaning wells or pits. They were dank, airless, and filled with rats. Even the government eventually decided they were too cruel. Jack heard a squeak from the corner. He stopped reading and looked up. He heard that squeak again, and the hair went up on his neck. "Was that a rat?" he wondered. "Was that a rat?" said Annie. The squeak came from the corner again, then a squeak from a different corner. Jack heard rustling along the walls and more squeaking. "Oh, man," he whispered. There were rats everywhere. "Yeah, I think it's time for magic," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack. "Definitely." He kept an eye on the dark corners while Annie reached into his backpack and pulled out Teddy and Kathleen's book. She started reading from the table of contents. "Stand on water, make stone come alive, make metal soft, turn into ducks." Annie looked up. "You think rats are afraid of ducks?" "Forget the ducks," said Jack. Go back to make metal soft? That's what we do. You can read the rhyme and I'll pull the bars on the windows apart." "Good idea," said Annie. Jack jumped onto the wooden bench under the window as the squeaking grew louder. Jack reached up and felt iron bars. They were cold, hard, and very solid. Jack couldn't imagine bending them. The squeaks got louder. Jack gripped 2 bars in the middle of the window and took a deep breath. Read the rhyme," he said. By the way, I think it's worthwhile pointing out, so I don't know if any of you are afraid of rats. Is anybody afraid of rats? So, rats have, and if you were with me in the Sun group, we actually talked about this and we read The Tale of Despero. But rats, historically, people have been really afraid of for multiple reasons. Number one is that rats are what we call plague carriers, or carriers of disease. So because rats are mammals, that means they have hair. They have, a lot of times they have fleas, and fleas bite the rats, and then the rats that have diseases, the fleas can transfer that disease to a human. So they can carry diseases, and they actually are responsible for one of the worst plagues in human history, which was the bubonic plague that swept through Europe and killed like a lot of people. And the rats were the ones who kind of transferred the plague. They are also can be dangerous because they can bite, and they can make you very sick from a rat bite. They're not like poisonous or anything, but just because they're dirty. And they just are kind of seen as a symbol of like being dirty and, disease transfer and things like that. A lot of people keep rats as pets nowadays, and you can get pet rats, but having just a wild rat is generally not considered to be great. The other thing is that rats, along with mice, tend to eat a lot, and so if they get into your food, they'll eat in your food and then they poop, and their poop is very dangerous. So rats are just in general not a great thing to have around. If you're not keeping them in a tank as a pet, they're just not awesome, and so people typically don't want rats to be around. Okay, read the rhyme, he said. Annie read aloud. "Iron or copper, brass or steel, brawn on saw, brawn on beal." As Annie finished the rhyme, the bars began to glow. They got warmer in Jack's hands. "I think it's working," he cried. Holding the bars tightly, Jack pulled in opposite directions. Slowly, the glowing bars began to stretch and bend. Jack pulled till there was an opening large enough for him and Annie to fit through. So, they've used one rhyme. They're down to 9 rhymes left. "We did it!" he cried. "Great, hurry, the rats are coming," said Annie, and she jumped on the bench. Jack heard a chorus of squeaks from all sides, and he looked down. He saw the shadowy shape of dozens of rats. They seemed to be sniffing the air below the window. "Go!" Jack cried. Annie squeezed through the bars and jumped into the hall. Jack followed. He hit the wet floor and scrambled to his feet. "Come on!" he cried. They sloshed down the watery hall. At the end, they nearly bumped into the 2 guards. Jack and Annie just kept running. "Hey!" the grouchy guard shouted, running after them. He reached for Jack, and the other guard tried to catch Annie. Strictly speaking, I'm not sure these are accurate guard outfits, but I could be wrong. Jack and Annie dodged away from them. The guards crashed into each other, falling to the floor, and they kept running. Jack and Annie dashed across the Bridge of Sighs, through the corridor and up the steps. "This way!" Jack called. They tore down the hall, heading for the golden staircase. "Hey!" guards yelled. Jack and Annie bounded down the golden staircase 2 at a time. They flew down the hall and down the giant stairs. They ran past the statues of Mars and Neptune and charged down the long open passageway. Finally, they dashed through the entrance of the palace and escaped into St. Mark's Square. Chapter 5. Lorenzo. Jack and Annie ran through the square, dodging dancers, fortune-tellers, and acrobats. They didn't stop until they were hidden in the middle of a crowd watching a puppet show. As Jack tried to catch his breath, he looked all around at the pirate and animal and clown costumes. He was glad that he and Annie were dressed silly. When they looked at each other, they laughed. "Maybe we shouldn't have tried to skip ahead," said Jack. "Yeah, you were right," said Annie. "We should have been patient. Let's go to the part about the painter Tiepolo." Jack nodded. "I think we should go to his house. Maybe he's there after all, and that clown has the wrong information." "I hope so," said Annie. "Well, the clown said that Tiepolo lives near the Church of San Felice," said Jack. He pulled out the map. "Okay, so we're here in St. Mark's Square, and we have to get here. All right, let's go, but stay in the shadow in case the guard comes looking." Jack stuffed the book in his backpack, and Annie grabbed his hand, and together they squeezed through the crowd until they came to an alley right off the square. The wind was blowing harder as they headed down the alley, one alley then another. So there's, you can see all the different kind of funny looking costumes. Which costume do you think is the coolest one in that picture? Would you want to be the man in the funny mask? Would you want to be a fancy lady, a clown, the bird mask, a pirate? What would you want to be? I kind of like the bird mask one. It's kind of creepy, but also cool. It's eerie. They walked past pack shops, cafes, and houses. As they walked away, further from St. Mark's Square, the streets were less crowded. After a while, they came to a small footbridge that crossed a canal. As they hurried over, Jack could notice the water washing onto the sidewalk. "What's going on with the water?" he asked. "Let's ask her," said Annie. She pointed to a young woman who was locking the door to the cafe. The woman wore a blue mask and lacy purple dress. Water was swirling around her shoes. "Excuse me," said Annie. "Do you know why there's so much water in the streets?" "Oh, there's been a lot of rain in the mountains," says the woman. "It washes it all down to the lagoon and makes the water high." "Is it dangerous?" said Jack. The woman smiled. "No," she said. "We often have high water here in Venice. Don't worry. You should go watch the fireworks on the waterfront near St. Mark's. Everyone's going there." "Thanks," said Annie. The woman waved and went on her way. "Guess we don't have to worry about the water," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack. But he couldn't help worrying when he saw a whole clump of seaweed wash past them. As Jack and Annie walked towards the Church of San Felice, a bell began to chime. Jack counted the bongs. 11. Then another bell tolled. Jack counted 10. "What time is it?" he said. "I don't understand." "Patience, remember," said Annie. "One thing at a time. First, we're finding Tiepolo's house." They came to the small church of San Felice. The square of the church was empty except for an old man walking a small, fat dog. "Good evening, little clowns," the man said with a friendly smile. "How come you aren't at the waterfront by St. Mark's Square? I'd be there myself, except my Rosa is afraid of the fireworks." He smiled at the chubby dog. "Actually, we're trying to find the house of a painter named Tiepolo," said Jack. "Oh, he's my neighbor," said the man. "He lives there," and he pointed to a dark house, "but you won't find him home." "Yeah, we heard he's away," said Jack, "but we were just wondering if he's coming back." "Fear not," said the man. Tiapolo told everyone he'd be gone for months. You should really go to the fireworks on the waterfront. Everyone in Venice will be there. They're quite magnificent. Thanks, said Jack. The old man waved, and then he and Rosa began to walk slowly across the square. The church bell started to bong. It bonged 11 times. Excuse me, sir, said Jack. All the clocks in Venice tell different times. Which one is correct? None, said the man. That's the wonderful things about our city. Venice is timeless. The man laughed, and then he and Rosa went into a small house. Jack sat on the bench. He put his head in his hands, and Annie sat next to him. I guess we do have to skip Tiapolo, he said. What's the next thing Merlin tells us to do? Annie asked. Jack sighed. He pulled out the magician's letter and read the next two. At midnight, 2 men will tell you the time. At the top of the tower, hurry and climb. Great, said Jack. How are we even going to know if it's midnight? The man just said none of the clocks are right because Venice is timeless or something. Well, according to Merlin, 2 men will tell us the time, said Annie. 2 men who own some kind of tower that we're climbing? Right, said Jack. But that doesn't make any sense either. Who are they? How are we supposed to find them? I guess we'll skip that part too. We're skipping our whole mission, whatever it is. A terrible disaster is about to happen to some grand lady of the lagoon, and we have no idea who she is. We don't know what the disaster is. We don't know where to find the ruler of the seas, or how to find a painter named Tiapolo, or even how to tell the right time. We're completely failing this test. Calm down. We just have to be patient, said Annie. Everything will make sense soon. How soon? Said Jack. He felt cold and wet and miserable. Very soon, said Annie. In fact, I think I see a light in Tiapolo's house. In fact, I definitely see a light. She ran over to the small house off the square and peeped through the window. Jack, she said, come here. Jack walked over. Someone's painting, said Annie. Through the window, Jack could see a candle burning in the corner of the room. He saw canvases and pots of paint, and a boy standing at an easel. The boy was painting a picture on a large canvas. He's just a kid, said Jack. He can't be Tiapolo. What do you guys think? Is he Tiapolo? Who could he be if he's living in Tiapolo's house? So, said Annie, maybe he can help us. She tapped on the glass. The boy looked up and carried his candle to the window. He had reddish-brown hair and big eyes. Hello, he said. You looking for someone? I'm Annie, and this is my brother Jack, said Annie. We're visiting Venice, and we were hoping for a painter named Tiapolo. Oh, you've just done so, said the boy. My name is Lorenzo Tiapolo. Lorenzo had a very serious manner. You're a painter? Said Annie. Yes, as you can see, I'm painting right now. I help my father and my older brother with their paintings. And when they're gone, I paint on my own. I will even miss the last night of Carnival to paint. Why are you not there? We're on a mission, said Annie. It doesn't matter, but we just escaped from the palace prison. We got caught looking for the ruler of the seas. The ruler of the seas, said Lorenzo. Why are you looking in the palace? The ruler of the seas is right here. What? Said Jack. The ruler of the seas is here? Lorenzo smiled and walked to a large covered canvas propped against a wall. He pulled off the cloth cover and held up his candle to show a beautiful woman resting her hand on the head of a golden lion. A man was giving coins to the woman. The man had a bare chest, a rugged face, long dark hair, and a white beard. Behind him was a 3-pronged fishing spear. My father has been working on this painting for some time, said Lorenzo. He pointed to the bearded man. It's Neptune. Neptune, said Jack. Isn't he one of the gods from Roman mythology? Yes, he's the ruler of the seas, said Lorenzo. Oh. We thought the ruler of the seas was the ruler of Venice, said Annie, and we thought he lived in the palace on St. Mark's Square. Lorenzo laughed. Nah, the palace is the home of the city's human ruler, he said. The true ruler of the seas is Neptune. Where does Neptune live? Asked Annie. Neptune lives beneath the water in a beautiful palace made of coral and sparkling jewels, said Lorenzo. But only a few people can actually see Neptune. Who? Said Annie. Those people with imaginations, like my father, my brother, and myself, said Lorenzo. We've heard the waves around Neptune roar like wild bulls. We've seen his fishing spear rising high above the surface of the sea, gleaming in the moonlight. That sounds great, said Annie. Yeah, great, said Jack politely. You guys have great imaginations. Thanks, Lorenzo. He turned to Annie. I'm gonna go look in the research book. Jack walked back to the bench and pulled out the book. He felt totally discouraged. Neptune wasn't even a real person. They'd come to another dead end. Annie stayed by the window. Lorenzo, I have one more question, she said. Why is Neptune giving a gift to the lady? So like I said, Neptune is one of the Roman gods. He was considered to be a god of the sea. And one of our planets is named after Neptune. Neptune is offering the riches of the sea to Venice. So the lady in the painting is the city of Venice, said Annie. Yes, said Lorenzo. This is how my father thinks of Venice. She's the grand lady of the lagoon. Jack looked up. He felt goosebumps. Thanks, Lorenzo, said Annie. You actually helped us a lot. You're welcome, said Annie, said Lorenzo. Good night. He closed the window. Jack! Jack, said Annie. The grand lady of the lagoon is Venice. I know. I heard, said Jack. Now I totally get our mission, said Annie. We have to save Venice from a terrible disaster, like the whole city. Chapter 6. Disaster. Hold on, wait. I have to calculate if I'm doing this. Okay, and that's where we're going to stop for today. Holy crackers, this is a long video. Bye, guys.